Hello, welcome to Unbelievable Tales.
Who stops for a street performance on their way to fire someone? Elliot Reeves had one goal that morning: deliver final papers to a small arts nonprofit and be done. But when he saw a crowd gathered near the fountain in Midtown, he paused. At the center stood a girl in white face paint, dressed in black, trapped inside an invisible box, or so it seemed. She didn't speak. But when she looked at him, she didn't need to. He recognized the pendant on her neck. It once belonged to his sister. The same sister who died 7 years ago. What followed wasn't a performance. It was the unraveling of a life he thought he understood and a future he never saw coming. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. He was already late. The kind of late that made his assistant send 3 nervous messages and 1 blinking calendar alert titled, "Terminate Arts Block Lease, Urgent." Elliot crossed Lexington Avenue with the ease of someone who didn't expect obstacles: tall, pressed suit, wired earpiece tucked away in his pocket, jacket draped neatly over one arm. But when the crowd slowed him down near the public plaza, he did what he never did. He stopped. There were no street musicians. No buskers with guitars or puppets or bold signs promising the world's fastest poem. Just a girl. A mime. She moved inside the invisible box, hands open, pressed against imaginary glass, face frozen in exaggerated confusion. A small hat with a slit rested at her feet. $2, maybe 3 inside. The kind of performance no one ever really paid for unless guilt or charm won out. But Elliot didn't move on. Not right away. Something held him. Maybe it was how still she was when she finally paused, as if the whole world had taken a breath and was waiting to exhale. Maybe it was the way the light caught the silver chain around her neck and the pendant hanging from it. His chest tightened. It couldn't be. The necklace was simple. An oval locket with a faint starburst scratched across the surface. Not valuable unless you knew the story behind it. His sister used to wear one just like it every day, tucked beneath her collarbone like armor. After the accident, it was supposed to have been buried with her. And now it was here, worn by a silent girl who smiled like she knew 1,000 things she'd never say. He blinked hard, shaking the image loose, and stepped forward. That's when she broke character just slightly. Her eyes flicked to his face. Recognition? Or reflex? He bent down and dropped a $10 bill into her hat. She dipped into a silent bow, then offered him an invisible balloon. Her hand floated upward, fingers letting go of the air like a child releasing something important. He didn't smile. But he didn't walk away either. "Where did you get that necklace?" he asked. She held her hands up in a theatrical shrug, exaggerated, deliberate. "I'm not playing," he said. Still, she said nothing. A man behind him muttered something about tourists, shoved past, and the moment broke. Elliot finally moved on, but his eyes didn't leave her until he turned the corner. That locket still burned in his memory. 2 blocks later, he stopped walking altogether. It had to be a copy. A coincidence. Some Etsy version or yard sale lookalike. People lost jewelry all the time. Still, something about the look she gave him, not startled but steady, made the thought itch. He glanced at his watch. The meeting. He turned around. She was gone. The fountain plaza was empty, just a few pigeons and a teenager drinking iced coffee by a planter. No hat, no mime, no trace. Back at his office, he said nothing. He sat through the meeting. Listened to the nonprofit director apologize for missing rent. Heard his legal advisor use words like breach and vacate. He signed the papers. Nodded when someone offered to take them downtown. And then, as the room cleared, he said quietly, "I'll deliver them myself." They didn't question him. Elliot Reeves didn't explain things. By the time he reached the nonprofit's address, a weathered brick building near the East River, the sun was lower. A dusty sign above the door read Art Block Community Project. Paint peeled at the corners. Someone had taped a flyer to the window: free youth theater workshops, mime, improv mask. His breath caught. Inside, the lobby smelled like acrylic and sweat. A young woman with paint under her nails looked up from a folding table stacked with program brochures. "Hi. Can I help you?" "I'm here about a lease termination," Elliot said. "Oh," she blinked. "You must be from Reeves Holdings." "I am. We thought someone else would bring the notice." She stopped. "Wait, did you come earlier?" He raised an eyebrow. "The mime." She said. Someone tall in a navy coat asked about her necklace. "What's her name?" "I think she goes by Luna." "Real name?" The woman hesitated. "We don't really ask. Most of the students here are working through things." He almost pressed. Almost demanded full names, ID records, enrollment forms. But then a laugh echoed from down the hallway. Young voices. Doors opening. And then she walked out. Same black clothes. No makeup now. Face bare. She held a paper cup of paint water and a sketch pad tucked under one arm. Her eyes caught his, and this time she didn't pretend not to notice him. She didn't flinch. Didn't smile. He stepped forward. You. Her gaze dropped, just briefly, to the papers in his hand. Is this your place? She shook her head. Are you Luna? She nodded once. Then we need to talk. Still silent, she led him down the hallway without a word. The room she brought him to had no chairs, just mats, easels, half-done projects, and a single cracked mirror along one wall. She sat on the floor and gestured for him to do the same. He stayed standing. That necklace, he said. Where did you get it? She looked at him for a long moment, then reached up and unfastened the clasp. Held it out to him in her palm. He didn't take it. Just stared. You won't speak. She opened the sketch pad. Wrote one word. Borrowed. He frowned. From who? She scribbled again. Promise not to shut this place down? He blinked. Was this a negotiation? I can't do that, he said flatly. She wrote again, faster this time. Then I can't tell you. He stared at the page for several seconds as if the handwriting itself could offer some loophole. She didn't look smug or defiant, just calm, like someone who had nothing else to trade except the truth she carried and the threat of silence. He finally sat down, not out of comfort, but because the only other option was leaving, and that wasn't an option anymore. Where did you get it? He asked again. She tilted her head, watching him, then flipped to a clean page and started writing slowly. The sound of pencil against paper was the only thing filling the space. It was in a box marked Donation, Theater Props. I help sort stuff sometimes. He narrowed his eyes. Where was this box? She paused, then added. That closet. We get a lot of estate leftovers. People clear houses, drop things off here. We keep what we can use. He reached for the necklace still lying in her hand and turned it over. The back had a barely visible inscription, Lark, the nickname only he and his sister used. This wasn't a copy. It was hers. And somehow this girl had been wearing it on a street corner, wrapped in white paint and silence, like it was nothing more than a costume piece. How long have you had it? She scribbled. For months. He stared again, then asked, softer now, do you know who it belonged to? She met his eyes. There was a flicker there, like she was weighing something invisible. I think so. His throat tightened. Who? She wrote slower this time, almost uncertain. Someone who mattered to you. There was a moment of stillness between them. No fanfare. No music. Just the sound of traffic outside and the clock ticking on the wall. Then, almost too quietly, he said, she was my sister. Luna didn't look away. Instead, she picked up the necklace again, wrapped the chain gently around her fingers, and passed it back to him without a word. He held it carefully, then closed his hand over it. For the first time in years, his voice dropped below its usual guarded timbre. Her name was Celia. She died in a fire. 7 years ago. I thought this was gone forever. Luna just nodded. And now it shows up here. On a girl painting on the sidewalk in silence. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out, just a ghost of a smile. She tapped her pen to the sketch pad and scribbled again. Sometimes lost things know where to find new homes. He exhaled sharply through his nose, almost a laugh. That's very poetic. She flipped the page and wrote, I'm a performer. We're full of drama. Something about that made him stare longer. She wasn't just a girl in costume. There was a sharpness behind the softness. A mind constantly moving, editing, shaping the world without speaking. He'd negotiated mergers with Fortune 100 companies and never felt this off-balance. And what's your real name? He asked, quieter. She hesitated. Then, June. Just June. Just for now. He pocketed the necklace. You know I'm shutting this place down. Her pencil hovered. Then wrote, I know you're supposed to. He tilted his head. Why aren't you trying to convince me not to? She tapped the side of her head, then pointed at him. Then wrote, You're not the type to change your mind because someone begs. No, he admitted. I'm not. She flipped to the back of the sketchpad and began drawing. Fast. Her fingers moved with a kind of fluid certainty as if the paper had been waiting for the story to arrive. After maybe 30 seconds, she turned it around. It was him. Sharp suit, stern brow, standing in front of a theater door labeled closed. But beside the figure, just outside his peripheral vision, stood a tiny mime with a string, quietly tying a balloon to his briefcase handle. His lips parted. It was clever. And sad. And strangely hopeful. You think that's what I am? he asked. The guy who closes doors? She raised an eyebrow and added below it. Not always. Some people just need to look down. He looked at the balloon again. It had a single word written inside it. Maybe. The door behind them opened and the paint-fingered girl from earlier peeked in. Hey June, I found more flyers. Oh. She glanced at Elliot. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. June waved her off with a gentle smile. The door closed again. Elliot stood slowly, brushing dust from his slacks. I won't stop the process. Not yet. But I need answers. June nodded. He paused at the door. Do you perform every day? She held up 5 fingers. Where? She scribbled. Fountain Plaza. Noon. If it doesn't rain. He hesitated, then nodded once. See you tomorrow. She gave him a mock salute, the edge of a grin threatening to form. The next day it did rain. But he went anyway. And found her already there, barefoot on damp pavement, her clothes wrapped in plastic bags she'd twisted into a skirt, her hat turned upside down and catching raindrops. She didn't notice him at first. She was performing, not the invisible box today, but something slower. A scene with an imaginary partner. A dance without music. A conversation built only on gestures and gaze. Then she turned. And saw him. And without breaking character, she mimed tossing him an invisible coin. He caught it without flinching. By the time her performance ended, he was drenched. But he waited until she packed up her things and walked toward the side street where the art building stood. I didn't think you'd come, she said, voice small, hoarse, but real. He blinked. That's the first word you've spoken to me. June nodded. My voice doesn't work like most people's. I choose when to use it. And why now? She looked up at him, rain dripping from her lashes. Because you listened. The rain became a rhythm between them. Not a storm. Not a reason to leave. Just the steady percussion of a city too busy to pause. June walked beside him, her shoes in one hand, the other clutching a plastic bag filled with soggy sketch pads. She didn't say anything else, but she didn't walk away either. He offered his umbrella. She didn't take it. I'm not fragile, she said, blinking water from her lashes. I just don't like being wet for no reason. Most people would call that a reason. She glanced sideways. You think I'm like most people? No, he admitted. Not remotely. They stopped under the awning of a closed flower shop. The smell of wet pavement mixed with something faintly floral. June dropped her bag and leaned back against the brick wall, arms crossed. So, she said quietly, are you going to shut us down? I don't know yet. That's not a no. He looked at her, rain clinging to his collar. You were wearing my sister's necklace. I know. You performed for strangers using a piece of her. Without knowing the weight. I didn't know at first. I just thought it was beautiful. And now? June hesitated. Now I know it meant something. To someone real. And I never wore it to mock that. I wore it because it made me feel like someone was protecting me. That silenced him. She looked down. I'm not good at saying the right thing. You're not bad at it either. She cracked the smallest smile. That's probably the nicest thing you've said. He tilted his head. You're not the kind of person I meet in boardrooms. I'm not the kind of person most people meet twice. That line hit deeper than she probably intended. He looked at her, really looked, at the smudges of paint beneath her fingernails, the faint trace of white makeup still at her jawline, the way her hair curled where it had dried unevenly. Why do you do it? He asked. The miming, the street shows, the drama. You're clearly smart. Why not something safer? She blinked at him slowly, then said with such soft conviction it nearly startled him. Because silence saved me. And I want to show people it can say something too. He didn't respond right away. There was too much in that sentence to unpack without breaking something. June shifted her weight. I'm not asking you to rescue us. I know. But if you're going to end it, at least look first. Stay for one workshop. One class. See what they get out of it. He raised an eyebrow. And what do you get out of it? I get to breathe, she said. And earn tips to maybe afford college someday. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. He looked up at the sky. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle. When's the next class? Tomorrow. Late afternoon. I run the beginner movement group. We make fools of ourselves to music no one else hears. That sounds chaotic. It is, she said, grinning. And it's kind of perfect. He nodded once. Fine. I'll come. Not in that suit, you won't. He glanced down. What's wrong with my suit? Nothing, she said, gathering her bag again. Unless you want to try crawling like a crab in $1,000 wool. He opened his mouth, then shut it. She laughed quietly and walked away before he could argue. He watched her vanish into the misty end of the block, still barefoot, still invincible in her own weather system. The next day, he didn't tell anyone where he was going. Not his assistant. Not his legal advisor. Not the building's co-investors who would probably raise an eyebrow if they saw him walking into a place with paint on the walls and music pouring through cracked windows. He changed into jeans and a black t-shirt, the plainest thing he owned. When he arrived at Art Block, the front desk girl gave him a knowing smirk and handed him a waiver. Just in case you pull something. We don't cover executives. Inside, the studio was half full: teens, young adults, 2 older women, and 1 kid who couldn't have been more than 10. They stood on yoga mats and bounced gently to warm-up music playing from a scratch speaker. And in the center stood June. No paint this time. Just leggings and a knotted t-shirt and hair pulled into a high, messy bun. She caught his eye, nodded once, and then snapped her fingers. The music changed. "Today," she said, loud enough to fill the space but still soft around the edges. "We're learning how to fall." Everyone looked at her. Not literally. Not yet. But we're going to practice the moment of imbalance, the beat before you hit the ground where the audience gasps. That's the heartbeat of physical storytelling. She demonstrated. Leaned forward, off balance, arms flailing just enough, and then caught herself with a quick pivot. Make your fall believable. But don't actually fall. Trust the edge. She turned to Elliot. "You too." He raised an eyebrow. "I'm just here to observe." "That's not how it works." He didn't move. She stepped closer, leaned in. "You want to understand why I won't beg for this place? Why I let you ask questions and didn't crumble?" He didn't answer. "Because I've learned how to fall. And how to stand back up." She stepped back and gestured to an open mat. Elliot exhaled through his nose. Then kicked off his shoes and stepped into the circle. The room cheered like he'd just joined a secret rebellion. By the end of the hour, he'd half-tripped over his own feet, narrowly avoided crashing into a folding chair, and really laughed more than he had in months. June was merciless. She corrected his posture, mimed exaggerated scolding when he overcommitted a move, and threw him invisible ropes he forgot to catch. But she never embarrassed him. Never talked down. Only pulled him deeper into the current of the room's energy. After the final cool down, as everyone scattered to clean up or chat, he found her near the mirror, wiping sweat from her brow with a towel. "You're terrifying," he said. "I'm efficient. You're exhausting. I'm inspiring." He gave her a look. "You don't have to be both." She grinned. "You came back. That's already something." He leaned against the wall, feeling the quiet hum of his own heartbeat settle. "You weren't what I expected." "I get that a lot. But you were right," he added, softer. "I needed to look down." She tilted her head. "Did you see anything?" He met her gaze and held it. "Yes," he said. "I did." They began seeing each other more often, but never by design. At least not officially. Elliot would pass by the fountain on his lunch break, and June would already be there, sometimes mid-performance, sometimes perched on the rim with her shoes off, eating a sandwich she'd bartered for with a sketch. She never asked why he came. He never offered. One afternoon, she was sitting cross-legged, white face paint only half applied, sketching a pigeon that had settled too close. "You're early," she said, without looking up. "You're not ready." "I'm always ready," she replied. "Just not always done pretending." He sat beside her. "Isn't that what performing is? Pretending?" He nodded. June shook her head. "No. Performing is telling the truth so loudly it echoes. Pretending is for people afraid to be seen." He fell quiet. The line was too pointed to be random. She didn't push. Didn't smile like she'd won. Just flipped her sketchbook closed and handed it to him. Inside was a rough portrait him again. But this time he wasn't in a suit. He was crouched, eye level with a child in a wheelchair holding out an invisible balloon. The child wasn't drawn in detail, just the idea of them. But his face looked lighter. Looser. "Why this?" he asked. She shrugged. "I see people for who they might be." "And who do you think I might be?" June looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, he didn't brace for judgment. Her voice was softer than usual when she said, "Someone who stayed." He didn't know what to do with that. So he didn't say anything. That night, he found himself walking past her building again. It wasn't intentional. Or maybe it was. He'd started taking different routes home, longer ones. Slower ones. His driver stopped asking why. She was on the front steps, a box of props at her feet, juggling pins, scarves, a pair of broken ballet slippers. "You look lost," she said. "You look like you're moving." "Borrowed storage space," she replied. "Too many kids signed up for the mask unit next week." I'm consolidating. He crouched, picked up a scarf from the box, turned it over in his hand. You do all this for free? Mostly. And the rest? She smiled faintly. Magic. He shook his head. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. They sat there as the streetlights flickered on, neither one moving to leave. Finally, Elliot asked, what's the real reason you don't speak when you perform? June didn't reply immediately. Then she said, because when I was 12, I learned that silence gets more attention than screaming. He looked at her. She wasn't smiling now. She stared ahead at nothing in particular. I grew up in a house where everyone talked. All the time. Yelling. Shouting. Making decisions that hurt. The quieter I got, the more they noticed me. And when I finally left, I decided to keep the silence. It became mine. Not theirs. Elliot swallowed hard. Where are they now? I don't know, she said. And I don't think they know where I am either. Which is kind of the point. He sat with that a long time. You ever think about stopping? He asked. June looked at him. You mean performing? No. Running. Her smile returned, but it was brittle. Every day. He nodded slowly. Same. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even comfortable. But something about that exchange shifted the ground between them, made it easier to breathe in each other's presence. The next time she saw him, it was in a setting she never expected. He showed up late to one of her outdoor workshops, not to participate, but to watch. Except he wasn't alone. A man in a gray blazer, one of those expensive haircut types, trailed behind him with a phone and a stack of documents. June paused mid-instruction. Her voice faltered. The kids looked confused. Elliot noticed. He gestured toward the man and said, just ignore him. Hard to do, she said coolly. He's holding the lease. Elliot turned to the man. Step back. The man blinked. We're on a deadline, Mr. Reeves. Then wait for me to catch up. The man retreated. Slowly. June crossed her arms. So this is what you meant by not shutting us down yet? It's complicated. It always is. I wasn't trying to sneak anything past you. No, she asked. Because it looks like the board finally started asking where their money was going. He didn't deny it. She shook her head. I should have known better. The second someone like you hangs around too long, there's always a price tag. That's not fair. No, she said. It's predictable. She walked away. And for once he didn't follow. He didn't see her for 2 days. Which was longer than it sounded. It meant 2 walks past the fountain with no trace of her. 1 canceled appointment just in case she showed up at the nonprofit. 3 unanswered messages sent to someone named Camila who apparently managed the building but offered nothing except she's not in today. On the 3rd day, she was there. White paint. Black clothes. No smile. She was doing a solo act, no music, no partner, just slow, subtle motion, someone climbing a rope out of a well. Her hands trembled at the effort. Her face held desperation, then determination. At one point she slipped, then caught herself. Gasped silently. Began again. He stood in the back of the small circle forming around her, hands in pockets, watching. When she finally finished, the crowd clapped softly and moved on. But she didn't collect her money. Didn't even bow. She just stared at the sidewalk. He stepped forward. You were brilliant. I wasn't performing for you. I know. I wasn't performing for anyone. He paused. What were you doing? Remembering, she said. How to keep going. They stood there in silence. Then she looked at him. I'm not something you can rescue to feel better about your guilt, she said, not unkindly. I don't need you to fund me or speak for me. I just need to know that if you show up, it's not because you're trying to rewrite a regret. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean to hurt what you built. You didn't, she said. But I've seen people like you tear down things they don't understand. I'm trying to understand you. June looked at him for a long time, then nodded once. Then don't watch me next time. Dance. He didn't dance. Not at first. But he came back. Every day. Sometimes with coffee. Sometimes with questions. Sometimes with nothing but a willingness to be present. June stopped painting her face so often. Not because she was giving up the act, but because she didn't need the barrier as much. And when she did perform, she looked for him in the crowd, always pretending not to, always finding him anyway. He never clapped, never cheered, but he stayed. That was enough. One evening, after a long Sunday workshop, they sat side by side on the roof of the nonprofit building, legs dangling over the ledge, a paper bag of warm churros between them. Do you ever wish things had gone differently? She asked. Elliot took a long time before answering. I used to, he said. But now I think, if they had, I wouldn't be here. With me. He looked at her. With anyone who reminds me how to breathe. June stared straight ahead. Her hand brushed his, accidentally or not, and neither of them moved. I applied to a program, she said. In France. Physical theater. 6 months. He froze. When? He asked. If I get accepted. September. He did the math. 5 weeks away. Would you go? June nodded slowly. I have to. It's the first thing I've wanted just for me. And the first time I've had the courage to chase it. He didn't speak. She turned to him. Would you be angry if I left? No, he said. Just sad. Her voice was barely a whisper. Me too. But neither of them made promises. Neither said what hung in the air between them. Instead, she leaned against his shoulder. And he let her stay there. 2 weeks passed in slow, steady motion. The nonprofit building received a stay on the eviction order. Elliot didn't pull strings. Not exactly. He just asked more questions, redirected attention elsewhere, and made it clear to the board that some things weren't worth the PR backlash. He didn't say it was for her. But everyone knew. June kept performing. Teaching. Coaching younger kids how to trust the silence between words. She didn't mention the program again. Not until she came running across the plaza one morning, hair loose, envelope waving in her hand. I got in, she laughed, spinning once, barefoot as always. Elliot caught her without thinking, hands at her waist, holding her still. And then they stopped. Their eyes locked. It would have been easy. Natural. To kiss her right there, in the middle of a fountain plaza where strangers clapped for no reason. But he didn't. Instead, he pulled back gently and said, "That's amazing." June's face flickered, joy, then hesitation, then something deeper. I'm terrified, she admitted. I've never left the country. I've never even had a passport. I don't know how to be brave by myself. You're already brave, he said. But you won't be by yourself. She looked up at him. What do you mean? I'll come visit, he said. Or send you sketch pads. Or perform badly on purpose until you come back to stop me. She laughed, one of those breathless, crumpled sounds full of disbelief. You're serious? He nodded. And then, more softly, you gave me back something I didn't think I could feel. You made me care about a place without elevators and air conditioning. You made me wonder what it means to show up for someone. Not once, but again and again. She blinked quickly. That sounds dangerously close to a confession. Is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, flat box. Inside was the necklace, the one he'd taken back. His sister's. Now polished, repaired. Its chain glinted in the sun. I think she'd want you to wear it again, he said. But this time, not as a prop. As a reminder. June didn't reach for it immediately. She just looked at him with something like awe. Then finally, she took it. Her fingers brushed his. Her breath caught. I'll come back, she whispered. You better, he said. Because I'm terrible at miming. She smiled. And this time, when she leaned in, he didn't hesitate. Their kiss wasn't loud. Wasn't perfect. But it was exactly what it needed to be, quiet, certain, and full of unspoken promises that didn't need to be shouted. The day she left, he was there at the airport. No suit. Just jeans and a hoodie and a sketch pad of his own in hand. She hugged him so tight he almost dropped it. You'll be okay, he said. So will you. I'll wait, he added. However long it takes. June pulled back, eyes bright. You won't have to wait forever. She turned to go, boarding pass in hand. Halfway down the corridor, she paused, then turned. With one hand, she mimed tossing him something. He caught it, invisible, light. What is it? He called out. June smiled. A maybe, she said. For now. And then she was gone. But the story, like her silence, lingered. And Elliot Reeves, once a man of boardrooms, signatures, and final decisions, found himself waiting not for answers but for the kind of presence that didn't need words to be real.
Bye, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.